Good morning, everyone. I guess I went on mute there. Sorry about that. Thank you for joining us today. The Our Driving Concern Employer Traffic Safety Program is pleased to be able to offer the webinar, Navigating the Work Zone Safely and Successfully. I want to welcome our presenter this morning, Jerry Ullman. Jerry is a Regents Fellow and a manager of the Work Zones and Dynamic Message Signs program at the Texas A&M Transportation Institute. Also joining us is Lisa Robinson. Lisa is the Senior Program Manager of the Our Driving Concern. A few things to note before we get started. If you joined us via phone, please press *6 to ensure your phone is muted. This will minimize background noise and ensure sound quality. This is a listen-only webinar, and you do have the ability to type questions during the webinar using the chat function anytime during the webinar. Questions will be answered at the end of the presentation. If you should encounter any problems or issues, please type a message in the chat function to let us know, or you can email me at vina.anderson@nsc.org. The presenter's contact information will be available on the last slide. There is a very brief post-event survey at the conclusion of the webinar through grant dollars and provided at no cost to employers. We would greatly appreciate your feedback. With that, I welcome Lisa and Jerry, and we'll turn it over to them to begin. Thank you.
Thank you, Vina. Good morning, Jerry. How are you today?
Great. How are you?
I am good. I am so thankful that you're here today to talk to us about such an important topic. You know, we hear every day about work zone crashes. We hear every day about fatalities and injuries that are occurring in the work zone. And I think everybody's thinking we've got less cars on the roadway, so it's probably not as much of a concern. So I'm super thrilled because you and I had a good conversation about, the need to understand how do we drive, how do we work in work zones. And so I'm excited to turn the program over to you so you can share a lot of really great information on work zone safety, especially since it's Work Zone Safety Week. So with that, Jerry, I'll let you get started.
All right. Thanks, Lisa. Good morning, everyone. I would echo Lisa's statements about the benefits of talking about work zone safety this week, given that it is National Work Zone Awareness Week. We do it once a year, but it's a year-round concern, and particularly as we've moved into the peak construction season here through the summer. You're right in that the traffic volumes are way down. Hopefully that will start to return to normal levels later this summer. But just because there's fewer vehicles out on the road doesn't mean that work zone safety is no less important. In fact, it may be a little more important because with the less traffic, we are seeing evidence of people traveling actually faster. Because there is more room, there's not as much congestion. So work zone safety, I think, is certainly a critical thing and timely to talk about today. What I'd like to do for just the next few minutes is talk to everyone here about the topics of today's presentation, and really they boil down to three main categories here. I want to review, and for some of this it's maybe new information. Some of y'all it may be review about just how many and what types of crashes do we have in our work zones. I do want to go through a number of strategies that agencies and contractors, highway workers themselves are doing. We don't, as drivers, a lot of times realize what all does go into trying to make a work zone safe and minimize the impacts to the traveling public, as well as maintaining safety for our workers. And then we'll touch at the end, just to reiterate what I think is pretty common sense, but I do want to end with reminding everybody what drivers themselves can do to reduce the risks of work zone crashes. So with that, just a few numbers. This is from 2017. It takes a little bit of time to update the data, but 2018 wasn't a whole lot different, and then I suspect 2019 will be similar as well, and they're a little disappointing, if you will, that we see over, in a typical year nationally, over 750 people lose their lives in work zone crashes. On top of that, we see another 37,000 individuals that are injured in these work zone crashes, and they comprise almost 100,000 crashes a year. So when you divide that across the United States, we're talking, depending on which state you're in, you might see 2 to 3. Here in Texas, we see upwards of 3,000 work zone crashes a year, and the fatalities, that's 2 a day that we lose across the country to someone in work zones, crashing in work zones. So certainly something to be aware of, and that we can't take for granted. A little bit about where these crashes occur. They don't occur exactly in the same locations and in the same proportions that non-work zone crashes do, and you can see that right here. Compared to what types of the crashes that occur in non-work zone locations, are work zone crashes, and this reflects fatal work zone crashes, but trends are pretty similar for non-work zone or non-fatal work zone crashes as well. That there's many more of the work zone crashes occur on our interstate, high volume, high speed facilities. That's a reflection of the fact that those are higher speed, higher volume facilities, and also reflects the fact that agencies have to spend more time keeping these roadways that are used more often maintained, rehabilitated, reconstructed, that kind of thing. So that's one of the things that keep in mind, is that's where you see the bulk of particularly fatal work zone crashes occurring across the country, both urban and rural areas. Because we're on those types of facilities, and that's also the types of facilities where we have a lot of our commercial vehicle traffic, we see a significant overrepresentation of commercial motor vehicles involved in in this case fatal work zone crashes on those facilities. As you can tell, on rural interstates, nearly more than 1 out of every 2 fatal crashes that occur in work zones are going to involve a commercial motor vehicle. Most of those are the large semi-tractor, trailer vehicles. We believe most or a lot of those are actually haul vehicles that are associated with the work zone activity itself. It's a little difficult to associate those kind of association with the construction vehicle with the available data, but certainly significant involvement in these commercial motor vehicles. I will say, we hear about the ones that make the news that are the large vehicle that runs into the back of a queue, and certainly are tragic. They usually involve a large loss of life, but the data doesn't suggest that it's strictly the drivers of those vehicles that are causing or contributing to these crashes. There's just as many fatalities that occur because of a passenger vehicle that's running into the back of these commercial motor vehicles as well, and because of the size mismatch of those 2 vehicle types, the severity of the crashes that occur are just very severe either way. So don't take this as a complaint against the motor vehicle driving community, just a recognition of the risks that are involved with work zones particularly on these higher volume, high speed facilities. A little bit about highway worker risks. In addition to the fatalities that occur that are predominantly occurring to drivers and passengers of the motor vehicles, we also lose a significant number of highway workers each year. The last year or recent year of data, 124 across the country were killed, and you could extrapolate that to thousands that were injured as well, although that data is a little more difficult to come by. When you look at what types of events lead to those fatalities, about a little more on the fourth are the work-related kinds of hazards where they fall from heights or equipment or material fall on those workers. electrocutions, suffocations due to trench collapses is a very big issue on our highway work, and improper trenching not being used for those situations leads to those types of fatalities. Another 28% are actual traffic-related fatalities. Workers as drivers or passengers traveling to and from work site to deliver materials or whatever that are involved in a traffic crash and are killed. But the vast majority, or the plurality of the fatalities that occur are workers that are being on foot who are hit by a vehicle of some type, run over or even backed over. So it involves both motor or passenger vehicles, the traveling public, as well as drivers of construction vehicles in the workspace itself. The data we have suggests that of all the crashes that occur in and around highway work zones, about 10 to 14% of those involve a vehicle, a passenger vehicle, traffic intruding into the work zone itself. So being careful about as you're passing through a work zone to reduce the risks of losing control, not paying attention, and intruding into that workspace and hitting a worker is significant. I've talked about overall numbers. Maybe one of the other ways to think about this is in terms of increase in risks. How much does a work zone increase my risk of being in a traffic crash as I approach and pass through it? And it really depends on the roadway type, as well as in this graph the type of work itself that's being done. As you can tell, if we're in a work zone and there's no workers there, it's what we would call that inactive in the industry term. We see some increase, 24% greater risk relative to driving that section of roadway without a work zone, and that's because we typically have to narrow lanes. We may have to close the shoulder. We have to put a barrier, or we put up devices next to the road, and all those just that little lack of available recovery space and shifting lanes and all that contributes to that 24% increase. That we get people starting to be there at the job or work site and doing things. We see again a slightly greater increase in risk, 31%. That additional amount is due to workers doing things that are catching people's attention. We call that rubbernecking in some cases, and people are not looking at that instead of what they're supposed to be doing, and so explains that slight increase or uptick in risk. We get people into the roadway. We do lane closures and make people have to leave a lane and merge and all those things that you're all well aware of. That further increases the risk. And as you can tell, risk, the likelihood of being in a crash when it's a work in the roadway and the lane closures in place, it goes up to 67% increase. But by far the biggest challenge and the biggest jump in risk occurs when we're doing those lane events that blocks a lane, reduces the capacity, and creates an unexpected backup. And again, the data that we have suggests that we see a fivefold, sixfold, if you did, depending on how you describe it, 500% increase in the risk of going through a work zone if there's a backup that's there. And it's because we're not used to, particularly our interstate roadways, that we're used to traveling at speed, coming up upon a situation where traffic stopped. We're not paying attention. That happens so quickly and leads to these crashes. And a lot of them are, or most of them are, the rear end at the back end of the traffic cube. So what do we do, or what do agencies and contractors do to try to mitigate these risks? Really four categories of things that we talk about here. The trying to reduce the duration of the work zones and the number of them themselves by coordinating things, trying to figure out ways to minimize the impacts to traffic when we do the work, using what we refer to as positive protection when we can, and then really the fourth category is we can't do those things, or even if we can, also providing notifications and warnings in real time so that they're credible and drivers know to react to them because they are reflecting what's currently going on to reduce those risks. Using the longer-lasting materials, making longer-lasting repairs themselves, and coordinating work efforts amongst different crews, and even on the same facility or even on multiple facilities in a region, are ways that we all try to, or agencies and contractors try to limit the number of work zones out there, because as I showed in that previous slide, any work zone increases risk. So if we can cut down and combine things together so that we don't have to do as many work zones, obviously improves work zone safety. As far as minimizing impacts, I think everybody's familiar. We do a lot of work at night and on weekends. It's a little more challenging for the work crews. They can't see as well. We have more impaired drivers, but still the trade-off to having all the work done during the day and having all those backups and that increased risk to all motorists is to do this at night and try to keep traffic from backing up as much as possible. The other thing that we try to do is provide a significant amount of advance notification so people don't use that road on the day or night when work is occurring, use other routes, that kind of a thing. As far as positive protection, we've got, used to be we only used the concrete barrier like you see here in the picture, and that was our only option available. And so depending on the type of work, if it was long enough and big enough of a project, we'd use it, otherwise we didn't. Fortunately, we are seeing technology coming through, and you'll see a number of other types of devices too that make it more useful for workers themselves. Movable barriers. These devices are interconnected. You use a machine like this, and we can move the lane, the barrier itself, very quickly on every day, every night, to create a space for work crews to work, and then pull it back over when they're not working, so that vehicles can use the available lane, maximum number of lanes, and minimizes congestion and that kind of thing. We have a number of manufacturers that have started producing steel barriers. These are easier to move than concrete. A lot of these, some of this in this particular design, you can actually, there are the wheels on the bottom that you can activate and move the barrier off or around as you need, and then roll the wheels back up, and it sits on the ground. Again, more flexibility, more applications to different work sites to protect the crews as well as the motoring public. And then fourth category are what we refer to as highly portable barriers, where they're actually on a semi-tractor trailer or semi-tractor that are towed into position here. They create a very solid workspace for crews that have to work right next to moving traffic. And so for very short duration activities where you can roll in, work for a few minutes or hours, and roll away again, provides an opportunity to protect the motoring public as well as workers in a way that we used to not be able to do when all we had were portable concrete barriers to work with. So another way that agencies and contractors are protecting our work zones. As far as the fourth category, the real-time warnings and notifications, we start with maybe what I would call them lower tech, but certainly a very good recent innovation, and there are portable rumble strips. We used to have to lay things down and glue them to the pavement, and so it didn't really work well for really short time frame kinds of work zones. We now have devices that are heavy enough and are easy enough to move out, lay down at the beginning of a work shift, and then pick up at the end of the work shift. Because they're laid down and are obviously temporary, we've seen evidence that the motoring public recognizes them as such, and it activates hey, there must be something ahead, because they wouldn't just put this out and leave it. and we see significant reductions in crashes that occur when there's a queue, particularly when there's a queue down the road, because it's the visual, if they've seen it, elevates their attention. If they're not paying attention, the tactile vibrations of running over this gets their attention. They start looking around for why what just happened, and that improved attention makes a big difference in reducing crash risks at work zones. More than the higher technology level types of things are we call them smart work zones, and they're different applications here. One application is a queue warning system where we put out sensors that around the work zone that tell us if traffic has slowed down and started to back up, and then that automatically triggers a message upstream to tell people that there is slow or stop traffic ahead, how far away it is to indicate that this is real time. This is not just a general warning. And again, we see very, very positive crash reduction benefits from this type of technology. In other instances, even farther away from the work zone, same kinds of different types of sensors, but same kind of a smart work zone system to manage the data that associated with how long it's taking to make trips. These travel time advisories gives drivers an indication that, hey, there must be something ahead, because the amount of time doesn't seem consistent with how far away it is. It also encourages diversions, and if we reduce the amount of traffic on the roadway approaching the work zone, risks of a crash, as well as the duration of the congestion that might be there, reduces, further improves safety. A few states have been granted the ability to actually use variable speed limits. Texas is not one, but here in Utah they have experimented with variable speed limits in the work zones and have been very pleased with the result. It all goes back to credibility of what the agency and the contractor are providing to motorists, and motorists recognize that this must be real time. They're slowing me down for a reason. You see compliance automatically improve with the speed limit as opposed to a static one that's reduced all the time. And again, they're very happy with that. Unfortunately, I don't have any crash data to share with you yet because it's a fairly recent innovation, but I suspect they will experience a good drop in work zone crashes because of that. And then perhaps one of the latest innovations that we are seeing interest in across the country are these vehicle entering warning systems, where we've got the workspace in the median or adjacent to the right shoulder, but very limited place for construction vehicles to get in and out. They come in and out at much slower speeds than normal speed of traffic. You create that rear end crash potential that leads to fatalities and injuries. These systems are, again, with sensors. They detect when a vehicle's getting ready to leave the workspace and enter the traffic lane, notifies workers or drivers approaching that there is going to be a slow speed vehicle entering. People merge out of that lane into the open lane, reduces the risks to the motoring public in general. So all these systems are things that the agencies and the contractors are doing to try to reduce risks. We do expect to see quite a bit of technology innovations in the near future as both connected vehicles and automated vehicles are being worked on by manufacturers and vendors. Someday soon, we think you'll be able to receive real-time information in your own vehicle about a work zone. If you've got an automated vehicle, it'll be able to receive information about a work zone downstream wirelessly and adjust accordingly. And that'll, again, we think make a further improvement in work zone safety. Finally, I'm going to leave you with this. Despite all the things that agencies and contractors are doing to improve work zone safety, as you saw at the beginning of the presentation, we do see a lot of work zone crashes and a lot of fatalities, and it's up to the motoring public drivers to be responsible themselves to bring down those numbers down. Same things that you've been taught since you first got your driver's license. Maintaining attention. We think distracted driving is a big problem in work zones because conditions change, and while 1 minute it looks like it's fine and you're floating along at 70, 60 mile an hour, come over. It doesn't take much to come over a hill and encounter stopped traffic, and the results are never good. So maintaining attention, maintaining that safe gap, no tailgate, because you need that time to adjust to changing conditions and get safely slowed and stopped if necessary. Actually slowing down and paying attention to the speed limit through the work zone. Obviously, a very common sense way to reduce your crash risk in work zone. The last one is something I see at a few entities themselves, some fleet companies, trucking companies, even agencies with their own staff doing is you end up encountering a work zone that's causing a backup, and particularly if you're at the back end of that, activating your hazard lights so that motion of the flashing lights catches the attention of somebody who's distracted, and reducing the risk of that person not responding in time and running into the back of you. So that's what I wanted to share with you all today. My contact information here if you have any questions. And with that, I'm going to open it up to Lisa if there's anything that we need to maybe clear up before we sign off here.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Jerry. You know, you gave a whole heck of a lot of information in a really nice amount of time so people can actually go back, digest what you said, and think about how they can keep their employees safer on the roadway, whether they work in work zones or whether they're just sharing the roadway. I have a couple of questions real quick for you. You've got some great points, and we're going to have this webinar archived, but is there any place that you recommend people look to make sure that they keep up to date on work zones, where the work zones are going? So if they do journey management and they're planning the routes that people take, or are there things that they can do to reduce being where the work zone might be?
There are a couple of things. Obviously, most state websites are trying to provide at least some information about work zone locations. The accuracy of that depends. It varies from state to state. Federal Highway Administration has the National Traveler Information website, and I'll have to look for that after we sign off. I don't remember the website exactly, where they tried to consolidate all the work zones nationally. Again, that will be predominantly the large construction projects, so day-to-day kinds of activities aren't going to be as well represented in those. Certainly, the Google traffic, the Waze, they're trying to work with agencies to better update their information, and there's technology out there where the location of the work zones are being uploaded automatically into the Waze, and so you don't have to rely on just other travelers calling those in, but they're being being automated that way. So those are all potential opportunities for finding out where work zones are across the country.
Are you seeing any trends, Jerry, that are concerning, like we're seeing an uptick, or I know you made a comment earlier about our numbers have really been significant and we're not really seeing a huge, drop, and are you concerned at all right now when we know that we've got less people on the roadways, or is, work zones still occurring as much? I mean, can you give any thoughts on any of where we're at currently?
Well, I do believe we will see a downward tick in crashes, just because volumes are one of the biggest drivers of crashes that occur in work zones. We have had has been occurring across the country, and the contractors themselves that are doing that are in some ways appreciating the lack of congestion that leads to higher speed. So I suspect we might have fewer crashes, but the ones that have occurred over the last several weeks will be probably more severe. The bigger question is whether there's an infrastructure bill that comes in, in the next several months, because that'll lead to a tremendous increase in the amount of work zones, and that's again where you'll see a big uptick if we start, having even more work zones out on the road.
Well, I thank you for your time today, and I do know that, work zone safety and driving and sharing the roadway is such an important component of an employer's transportation safety program, and it can't be overlooked, and it should be a part of a consistent and ongoing conversation. And I think you have so many key points that people can continue to look back on and share and continue to find ways to keep their drivers safe and share their roadways. So thank you for your time, Jerry. Do you have any closing thoughts before we turn it over to Vina?
Not at all. Hopefully this was helpful to folks.
Very much. Vina, do you have some closing points?
Yes, thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Jerry, for being with us today. Thank you, everyone else who attended today. Remember, you can check out our upcoming webinars on our website. Please, as you exit out today, please complete the brief survey. This helps us with future webinars. With that, this concludes the webinar. Have a good day and stay safe.